Slow Mesh College Football Week 7. John Reed and Jesse Simonton. Week 7. Week 7. We're halfway through the season. We talked last week about learning things about teams. As we come in here, I still don't know what I know and what I don't know outside of, some of these.
Feel pretty good about my Texas as a fraud.
Yeah, I was going to say outside of a couple teams failing to live up to expectations, Texas, frauds, Penn State. If you believed that they were going to be anything other than what they always are, I guess that's on you. But two teams that were, at the top, you add Clemson to the mix. 3 of the top 4 teams in college football already with multiple losses now by the time we get to week 7. What's up, Jesse?
You can. I think we can discuss, kind of jump right into it. I think there was some natural skepticism, maybe about each one of those teams you mentioned. But as I put up on my Substack on Monday, I joked that we know nothing, and it was literally the national media, menage a trois. Those 3 teams, and I include myself in that group where I had Clemson making the national championship. I had them losing to Bama, but I did have Dabo kind of, was kind of buying the Dabo Kool-Aid this offseason. And it's hard to not see, or it's hard, I guess, to really kind of pick nits at really how bad we were so wrong on this stuff. Because it's almost like if we're wrong on these teams, John, which we thought we knew a lot about, you could be an arch skeptic. You could be a Drew Aller skeptic. You could be like, I don't really buy into what Dabo's selling. But for those 3 teams to have a combined 9 losses, and we ain't even in pumpkin carving season yet, there's no one that saw that coming.
Speak for yourself. Some of my friends have already started carving pumpkins, just for the record.
Okay.
Yeah, some people here in Tennessee have already started getting the knives out and getting some pumpkins ready, but
they may not last till Halloween, just like Clemson and these guys' playoff hopes.
Yeah, just like these teams, and it feels like every year, and people wonder how could you miss these teams so badly, and with Texas, I mean that's a head scratcher. I mean, the offensive line, has been really porous for them. Arch has been really jittery, really rattled behind that offensive line, but still, when you look at Penn State, there's no excuse for losing to UCLA.
Zero. And you can't, the whole, I mean, that must be the greatest whiteout hangover in history to I know that was their Super Bowl last weekend against Oregon and they lost that game, but for James Franklin to have his entire moniker, people have laughed about this for years, but his entire moniker is like he wears that damn 1-0, lapel on his jacket everywhere because it's win the week. And then you go and your defense just doesn't even get off the plane in UCLA. Nico's out there looking like Michael Vick. I mean, that was Nico played better on Saturday than he did in any single game at Tennessee.
No, I mean, Nico, and you could throw Neuheisel in there with him, but those are the 2 biggest winners of the weekend, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that was Nico's best performance. That's kind of the vision you had whenever, he was this 5-star top-ranked quarterback. Now I thought that would happen in Knoxville at Tennessee, but no, he was awesome. And it finally seemed, and I don't know if it was Neuheisel. I don't know if it was something with Penn State's defense or what, but it was the most comfortable and confident we've seen him as a quarterback, making quick decisions and finally treating his legs like the weapon that they always should have been. And he was decisive when he ran. And, he had moments at Tennessee where he scrambled, but it almost never felt decisive. It always felt panicked whenever he did it, but it didn't feel that way on Saturday.
I always enjoy your the kind of low-key winners and losers tweet when you put that out. Who was a low-key loser this weekend was Tim Skipper, because I think everybody thinks that Neuheisel's the head coach, even though he's just the offense. And I know it was a big deal because he came in, Tino got fired, on Tuesday, so he had 48 hours to put a game plan together, did a really nice job there. But it is somewhere like Bomani Jones. I just can't. Maybe on his podcast this week he'll have a joke about it. I would not be surprised if it's like, of course we're giving the shine to another white guy instead of the black man who's actually the head coach and got these guys to like rally behind him. But I know that's just a funny aside. But it's just funny because Neuheisel's getting written about everywhere, and I think I've barely seen Tim Skipper's name mentioned twice.
Oh, no, man, we said the same thing on this morning on the radio, Talk Sports, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. if you're a Tennessee fan and want to listen. But Neuheisel got all the coverage. Neuheisel got all the coverage almost to the point where, like, I don't think they're going to treat him like a real coaching candidate. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they'll make the same mistake that they did with Foster in terms of taking a guy with no head coaching experience and giving him the job. Now, I think if it was, if Foster had never been there, and we're looking at UCLA trying to get a spark. Like, if it was last year, for example, maybe Neuheisel would have got the job. I don't think he's going to be a candidate for it this year, but I could see something where they hire someone like an Ed Ogeron or somebody that basically gets the stipulation of like, hey, you could come here, but we're keeping this kid on staff. He's your OC, and like he's our UCLA guy. That's how good of a week it was for him. Now, with that being said, Nico could go back to being a pumpkin. UCLA could go 2-10, 1-11, and maybe they'll always just have, the first weekend in October. But can't argue that Nico finally looks like the $8 million quarterback. That's as good as he's looked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly is an interesting takeaway if you're spinning it forward for, hey, what is Nico's prospects if he does start to show more of that next season? Probably not at UCLA. If he continues to play well, he's probably back on the transfer market and suddenly has kind of maybe recalibrated his own brand.
Tennessee might need a transfer quarterback. Yeah, I mean Tennessee might need a transfer quarterback. If Bobby Petrino's back on the sidelines at Arkansas, you can always go back home.
What they don't want. They talk about go back home. I don't think the folks in Happy Valley are too happy with old James Franklin right now. What do you think he's going to end up doing next season? Is he on? If you were a guessing man right here, would you say that he's on the sidelines in 26 at Penn State, or is he coaching elsewhere?
Is it not kind of like Mark Stoops in the sense of like, if you get hired
I thought you were going to go with another Mark. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you get hired by a quote-unquote upgrade, like they did with Texas A&M, and I don't even know who would be considered necessarily an upgrade at Penn State who would actually hire him, but like your fans would be so mad about it, they would veto it. So like if you're Franklin, I don't think any other school is going to come hire you right now, that it's not a step down. Am I wrong? Like, is there anybody out there that would be looking and saying, hey, James Franklin, because his whole thing was he goes 10-2, but he always beats the teams he's supposed to beat, and he might have the most embarrassing loss of the season right now when you look at what UCLA did to them.
I think if Auburn or one of those schools come open, I agree. Like they would flock Toomer's Corner and be pissed because they would think that they could get somebody better. If Arkansas ends up getting a better coach than James Franklin this cycle, I would be surprised.
Well, that's fair, but like if you're James Franklin and Arkansas calls you, like I mean, they'd have to pay you $10 million to make it look like you were not, just tucking your tail and running away. Like, But isn't this? Think about who the basketball coach is at Arkansas. Isn't this the John Calipari situation for football? Yeah. Can you afford to pay two of those though? That's the question. Is like, can you afford to pay for two of those? They got that
Tyson money, man. They got that Tyson chicken money. They got that Walmart money.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's funny.
I don't know. It's funny. I thought you were going to bring up because I have pushed back for several years now. The James Franklin is just the Mark Richt of the Big Ten. Because if that were true, to make that analogy actually work, it would mean that Mark Richt, would have lost every single time to Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mark Richt won some big games. Mark Richt won some big games. James Franklin's won one.
Yeah, he's won some big games. He had won multiple SEC championships. Franklin won one, has one Big Ten championship. And Mark Richt, Franklin now got it. It's wholly ironic too, John, that we're having this conversation just 2 years or even a year and a half into the second season of the expanded playoff, because they pretty much expanded the playoff for James Franklin and Penn State. They were like, oh, Penn State is getting, they're always, the Charlie Brown of the team that's just left out, number 5 or number 6 or number 7. What would they do if they made it to the playoff? And then last year they make it to the playoff and have the easiest road to the semifinals ever, getting to play Boise State, and SMU. And it's just like, okay, come on. And, they play Notre Dame and get the tail kicked in. So you're not wrong that, like, again, I agree that I think a Florida or an Auburn, if these jobs end up coming open, their fans would riot, much like you led the sacking of Shiano. They would riot, I think, similarly if James Franklin was seen as like the front runner for their job. But hey, he's a West Coast guy. What if UCLA? What if the team? It's awkward to say this today. What if the team he just lost to in embarrassing fashion is like, hey, James, we're actually going to invest in football. Come back out west.
Yeah,
get a reset.
That's just another one. Like, I just don't see them having any money. Like, I just don't see them having the money because Franklin makes so much at Penn State. You couldn't take a pay cut to leave, at least a significant one, especially if you're moving all the way to California. Like, it seems like I said with Stoops, you're just kind of stuck. You can't fire him because he's done so well, and no one else is realistically going to hire him, at least where their fans are happy enough. Now, Auburn would be interesting. Like, Auburn should get a grip if they think they're better than James Franklin, because that's the type of coach. Like, he could go there and win, 8 or 9 games, and I think they should probably be happy with that in the current landscape of college football. But understand, being on that side of it, you always want to swing for somebody way more exciting than that.
Yeah, I think Auburn would, if they move on from Hugh, Auburn's going to be in the mindset of like, hey, why can't we get Rhett Lashley, or why can't we get John Sumrall or something like that? Just almost banking on the upside. But I
Alex
guess
Golesh, I'll be interested to see if he gets a shot. But
I think he's going to get some. I think he's going to get some real burn for Arkansas, especially now that it came out that his wife is from there.
Franklin is just a good batch of chicken tenders. That's it. It ain't going to be the best meal in the world, but you're going to be generally happy. You're going to be full. Just usually people get tired of eating that every night. James Franklin choking.
I think the folks in the folks in Happy Valley are about ready for some steak and potatoes. I think, because I mean, John, here's the thing, and this circles back to the column I wrote. No one foresaw it, even if again, I've been a Drew Aller skeptic. I've been critical of James in the past, but this was a kind of burn the boats, circle the wagon season at Penn State, where they did the Ohio State Michigan deal, where they invested in their roster, which we know has a bunch of future NFL guys, even take the quarterback out of the equation, but that whether it's the running backs, they got that Denny Denai Sutton, they got the linebacker, that King, they got safeties, they got all these guys that they said, hey, you guys got second and third, whatever round grades, come back like the Ohio State band did a year ago. We're going to go make a run to a national championship game. Ohio State's young, Oregon's young, yada yada yada. And, 6 weeks into the season, they lose another, Super Bowl game, whiteout game. And then they just completely faceplant on what's probably going to end up being the biggest upset of the season. There's no way anyone foresaw. Yes, you could foresee the Oregon loss. No one foresaw Penn State losing to UCLA. So them having 2 losses by now is just rather remarkable, honestly.
Yeah, and then, of course, I mean, they're not completely dead. They got 2 resume games. Now, the good news is if you win these 2 games, you'll be back in the playoff. The bad news is you got to win both of them and then win all the rest of your games. But they get Indiana, they get Ohio State. If they're able to win both of those, they would be big enough wins to get them back in the playoff consideration. And what you said, I think, is right. And, when you look at the roster and all the talent, it's right. But I couldn't really get past, Jesse, Yeah, they had all the talent, but did they not lose by far their two best players last year? Like Tyler Ward and Abdul Carter were by far their best players, right?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
So, like, you tell me they bring back the second and third rounders. That's cool. But, like, if you lose two top 15 picks, like, I feel like that should have been a bigger deal when everyone was saying, hey, Penn State's so talented, so great. It's like, yeah, they're two game wreckers. Their game changers are gone, though.
Yeah, but I do think the receiver room's better today than it was a year ago. But that, if you're just talking about pass catchers and playmakers in general, what Tyler Warren's doing in the NFL speaks for itself. So he is, after Brock Bowers, has probably been the most impressive collegiate tight end in the last, decade or so.
Well, look at Georgia. They ain't quite been as good since Brock Bowers left either. I mean, they're still really good,
yep.
but like that the program changers are program changers for a reason. So like, you lose just those bluest of blue chips, and it's impossible not to be a little disappointing. What else from the weekend stood out to you?
We got to talk about Texas and Arch, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, is that rock bottom for Arch? Like, I mean, Cardwell coming in and ripping his one pass for 26 yards was a nice little salt to the wound. Arch just looks lost out there, and
I don't even know if that was salt to the wound, John, or if that may be just like a knife to the neck. Because here's the problem. Sark can't bench Arch.
Well, that's one of the questions I got from the listener. Like, is there any chance they could bench him? And you're saying no.
Well, take me through it. I don't think that he can, because but he can't bench him, and yet we just saw a kid. So it was one seed, but he came in, and it wasn't even that he completed the seed, John. It was that it was just bang bang. It was like snap, take it, throw the ball down the field. There was no hesitation. It was in rhythm. It was that Arch may have a way better, ceiling. Arch may have better arm strength. But he clearly, despite all those Warby Parker ads, he can't see a blitz at all. He has no vision or feel just for the pressure in front of him. And yet I don't think Sark can bench him because of the investment that they have made and kind of the promises that they have made to that family. It seems impossible to do so. Tell me I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, I don't think you're wrong. And Cardwell wasn't like a big recruit, right? I mean, he was he's
a transfer from Troy.
Yeah, just a pretty mid-tier guy, right? Okay, so like he was never supposed to be like the quarterback of the future. Like if you had a guy in the wings that was supposed to be the quarterback of the future, maybe you make that move for a shot in the arm, but that's not what Cardwell is. I said it this morning, and like it's crazy to me, all offseason, the Paul Feinbaums and the people that were really blowing smoke up his ass were talking about like how Arch doesn't play like a Manning. He's way more athletic. And I'm like, you're damn right he doesn't play like a Manning, because I'm just blown away at his lack of feel for the game. Like his lack of being able to read coverages, his lack of being able to be on time. It's like everything has to be like plays broken down, I'm going to scramble or roll out type of thing. He just struggles with the quarterbacking part of playing quarterback.
Well, and here's the concern too, or I don't even, it's a concern. I guess it's more of like a blinking red light for everyone who is still out there defending Arch, because he certainly still has his defenders in the national media. They all talk about his inexperience and the fact that he's only started X amount of games. I do think that that's true, from a micro perspective. Yes, starts are important, but he's in year 3 of the same system. This isn't. I mean, C.J. Carr just got to Notre Dame and is doing just fine. Sayan looks like he's going to be a future star. Dante Moore didn't have a ton of starts, but he did, like Arch, have that quote benefit of waiting in the wings and playing in that same system as a practice player for a number of years. So if it looks this bad for Arch and he's in year 3 of Sark's system, it's hard to think that somehow suddenly this season it's going to get a lot better. Maybe with another offseason or whatever, but considering they got, Oklahoma's defense on the schedule, they got Georgia's defense on the schedule, they got to play Vandy, they got to play A&M. I mean, that's why the irony is, What if the kid behind him is just Jake Fromm? Well, Arch isn't even Jake Fromm. But what if he's Jake Fromm, where he doesn't have the strongest arm or whatever, but he can throw the ball on time and accurately put it where it wants? Then maybe Texas's offense looks a lot better. But they're going to roll with Arch just because of, think about this. This isn't just a football decision. This is a business decision with what they've invested financially in this family, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm more interested in what happens, like at 7-5, because that's what they're projected to go right now on the SP Plus. I was looking at that. They're projected to go 7-5. Like, Sark's not getting fired at 7-5, right? Like, they're not going to restart. Like, it'll just be kind of a, hey, that's really bad. Hey, you're on the hot seat now. But, like, what happens next year? Like, you have to go to a different quarterback at that point, right? Like, and if you're Archie and you're Cooper and you're Peyton, like, you pretty much have to tell Arch that he has to go somewhere else and find a different system and start over, right? Like, they have to break up. And that's what I'm more fascinated by, is just how bad it gets.
We are barreling towards a kind of black hole scenario. You're right. I do think that, which seems wild to say when people were literally, again, we know nothing, but this offseason, and that's a $20 million roster, John. That's one of the most expensive rosters in the country. Now, the offensive line,
that feels like a low number. That feels like a low number.
Yeah, and maybe that's low, but it's at least a $20 million roster. And we knew that offensive line was going to have to replace four starters from a year ago. But that they have blue chip talent all over. If we can't or can whiff so badly on a team like Texas, man, it's just hard to predict now in the NIL transfer portal world because the volatility is so high. It's not NFL in terms of parity, but we are inching closer in terms of on a given Saturday or Sunday, anything can happen. I mean, the thing about Sark is that he got so much goodwill from winning that game in the playoff a year ago and then playing Ohio State tough, that then folks again were writing about Texas being like the new world order of college football. And then you look at his record, and basically since in the last couple of years, he hadn't beaten anybody worth a hill of beans. Texas has really just, loaded up on cupcakes. His record, a couple losses to Georgia, couldn't beat Kalen DeBoer at Washington. It's just, if they go 7-5 and Arch looks like Arch has looked, so far this season, they're going to be facing some hard questions on 40 acres. They do have 5-star, what's the kid's name? Raja Bell's son is the 5-star quarterback that's committed to Texas right now for 2026. So could they start a true freshman a year? Would Sark move on from Arch in favor of a true freshman? I don't know, but it's some fascinating questions down the line.
I just don't see how they wouldn't make a move, or how like his family wouldn't be like, hey, remember that footage you saw after like game 2 where Arch is wincing as he's throwing the ball? Yeah, he's been hurt all year. We got to get him shut down and get him healthy. Like, Texas did him dirty. Texas didn't shut him down. Sarkisian stood up there and lied and said he wasn't hurt. But you guys all saw the video, right, of him wincing while trying to throw a 20-yard pass. Yeah, clearly our baby boy's not healthy. This isn't his fault. We got to get him cleaned up. Because that's the only explanation that I would accept for him playing so poorly at this point.
Yeah, but then, like The Athletic, I think it was Sam Kahn of The Athletic went back and watched every single pass he had. This was before this past weekend. I think it was like before the Sam Houston game. Went back and watched every single pass that Arch had at Texas the last year and a half, and he just winces half the time. Like, it's just kind of what he does. So you're not wrong. Maybe that'd be a great excuse, but I'll tell you this for Sark. I will say everyone offers him or owes him a bit of an apology for trying to dunk on him a year ago. Like, hey, why didn't you bench Quinn when Quinn's shoulder was falling off for Arch? Why weren't you play Arch? Why won't you play Arch? Maybe Steve Spurrier was right this season when he basically said if Arch Manning was worth a hill of beans, why didn't he start over a guy who was a 7th round pick a year ago?
Well, that was a red flag. I was asking this offseason too, and it turns out that he is not the greatest quarterback of his generation. Turns out that was a little premature.
Yeah, Paul Feinbaum's having an interesting week.
Well, yeah, we'll see how interesting it gets between the Clay Travis and On3 report that ESPN's basically blackballed him from going on any other shows.
Yeah, between the Arch Manning fall from grace and then the back and forth with ESPN, I don't even know what to believe on that, frankly, just because, I mean, I know that ESPN's PR person's come out and claimed otherwise, and then Clay Travis is like, this is over your pay grade, and yet it was literally a week ago in that same interview with Paul Feinbaum and Clay Travis that Paul said that ESPN's top brass, McManus, or I think the guy's name is, I forget, Bert, was like, yeah, you're welcome to go think about becoming a senator in Alabama if that's what you so choose, or running for politics or whatever. And tell us when you make a decision. It just all seems bizarre.
Alabama at least winning some games for him as they take care of Vanderbilt. Felt like Vandy had plenty of chances, though. Like, it feels like if Pavia played like Pavia talks like Pavia plays, then they win that game. Instead, Pavia with 2 turnovers that I think both could have been avoided, and I think both swung that game.
Yeah, I don't know if they win that game, though, because I think when push comes to shove, Ty Simpson is a guy that you want in your corner at quarterback. He just makes the right plays. He makes the right plays, and Bama's defense, I also thought, bowed up better than they have all season. So was it a Pavia deal, or did Alabama's defense kind of flex a little bit? And I do think in week
Pavia
2,
fumbling in the first quarter. I thought that was him just being careless with the ball, and I thought his interception in the either end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, when they were down 6. I thought that was a pretty bad throw as well. But I know their defense overall played well, and Vandy had no run game, but I thought Pavia was pretty reckless.
And Jam Miller, I thought, kind of had his legs underneath him a little bit better, in this second week coming back. Alabama finally had a little bit of a run game. I don't know. I mean, I think you still feel good if you're Vanderbilt that, hey, we can look up for pretty much anybody on our schedule and say, hey, we can compete for 60 minutes and win. And I think if you're Alabama, you got to think the schedule's only going to keep getting harder. They got this like sleepy, breakfast, keg and eggs game against Missouri on Saturday. What's 11 a.m. or 12 a.m. kickoff. And then it just continues to roll on from there with Tennessee and some of the other teams on that slate. So Alabama's just going to have to kind of keep swinging each week because right now they're the class of the SEC, but there's landmines all over, from now until basically December.
Well, huge one this week. Huge one this weekend. The line came out, and it's been going in Missouri's favor as Alabama heads to Como to take on Eli and the boys. And, it's an early start, which is that Bama favoritism there, the SEC not putting, Alabama, having to play on the road at night. They're getting the 11 a.m. start. Not going to be a too raucous of an atmosphere, or at least one that's been drinking all day. That felt like a little bit of a gift from the SEC. But how do you look at that game when you look at Missouri hosting Alabama?
Yeah, I honestly think I wonder if the schedule just kind of bit Missouri in that there's just some other huge games this weekend. And, when kind of the windows were set, because, the SEC didn't outright choose these times for every game during the season, but we did for the first time because ESPN and ABC owns the rights to all these games. They did at least give windows that I think because, you got Red River. Obviously, Red River does not have the pizzazz of what everyone thought it was going to be because of where Texas is right now. But then you got Georgia, Auburn, South's oldest rivalry. You got some of these other big games. I wonder if, Missouri was just kind of a time slot, tragedy there, so to speak. I think the Tigers absolutely can win this game. I mean, but what Bo Pribula has done, Alabama, this is going to be, Georgia ran the ball all over them. We know what Missouri is going to do. Ahmad Hardy, Pribula can use his legs. They got a couple other backs that they rotate in there too. So I could see a lot of points in this game. I don't know. I mean, what's the over/under?
52.5.
Yeah. My gut lean says take the over from as we sit here today.
If you're going to win, if you're going to be Alabama, are you not trying to do those long drives, though? Those ground control, the short passes, the 7-8 minute drives. I feel like that might be Alabama's path all year when it comes to running offense.
Yeah. But Missouri could be a little leaky in the secondary. And so is this a game where Ryan Williams kind of goes off again? Gio Bernard heavily involved. I mean, I really like all three of Alabama's playmakers. Horton from Miami.
They all got to eat against Vandy. They all showed up and got to play well, which from a Tennessee perspective, you'd hoped that Jermod McCoy would be back on the field against Arkansas, knocking some rust off before Tennessee has to go to Tuscaloosa, but it does not appear that that's going to be the case. So that's going to be a big test for Tennessee's secondary. But Alabama, running you don't necessarily want to call it a gauntlet, when Vanderbilt is involved usually. But this Vanderbilt team, I was impressed with them against Alabama. I thought they held up much better in the trenches than a traditional Vanderbilt team would, obviously. So, this is a tough run. You said you just got to keep swinging to go to Georgia, then Vandy. Now you got to go to Missouri. And if you win that, okay, here's now a top 12 Tennessee team coming down that's going to try to put up a whole bunch of points on you. It's a tough stretch for Alabama.
Hey, man, it is life in the SEC, right? Everybody's schedule's hard. That's really what it comes down to, is that everybody's schedule's hard. And it's only going to get harder, once we have, or more challenging once we, extend to these 9-game SEC slates. But, I mean, think about it, another game this weekend. Again, this is to Missouri kind of being a, casualty of the time slots. Another night game, Florida goes to Texas A&M. Florida, huge win in the swamp. It's going crazy. Their fans are, kind of bittersweet and kind of torn in every direction because they want their team to win. But what does a win mean for Billy? Does that mean we're not going to get Lane Kiffin? That they're in all sorts of, tying themselves in knots and all this stuff. And, hey, it could all be not for a week, because now you got to go to College Station and play at night, in front of the 12th man.
It is such a fascinating dilemma. Tennessee used to live on that side of dilemmas of, are you still rooting for the coach, or are you rooting against them? Are you wanting this to get ugly so you can reset and get a winner in there? Is it better just to root for wins, even if it means you're stuck in mediocrity? Because, Florida would have made the switch last year from Napier had they not beaten Ole Miss and beaten LSU, but instead they did. And then they ran the staff back, and now they're, 2-3 out the gate. But what I will say about old Sunbelt Billy is that his team clearly likes him, that they clearly do not quit when it comes to his job being on the line. Now they wait until he's hooked up to the monitor, and they wait till he's headed to ICU before they decide to start winning games. But they got a chance to kind of save their season with another top 5, top 10 win on the road. That would be a really impressive one. Only a 7.5 point spread, so they're going to have a puncher's chance. I'll mix in a question here from the audience. Of the teams, there's 3 SEC matchups with a point spread higher than a touchdown. Tennessee minus 13.5 at home against Arkansas. This A&M Florida game we're talking about, 7.5, or LSU minus 8.5 at home against South Carolina. Which one's most likely to lose, in your opinion?
I mean, I think it's A&M, even though, again, Florida's coming off this, rousing kind of rise from the ashes win, because I think that Gator defense has shown on a weekly basis it's for real. They hung with Miami because of their defense. They gave LSU fits, on defense. And then they just completely pantsed, Texas for the majority of 3 quarters outside of a couple blown coverages. 6 sacks, a bunch of other pressures. And so the defense is going to keep them in the game, I think, on the road in College Station. And then if Damon Wilson, is truly the key that kind of unlocks Florida's broken offense, then, you pair that 5-star freshman wide receiver with Vernell Brown, another blue chipper out wide. And suddenly DJ Lagway has more than one guy to throw to. He certainly was kind of playing in rhythm a little bit better. But even then, I thought his numbers looked a lot better than maybe his actual play. I didn't think that he suddenly looked like a completely, totally different quarterback. I think it just really helps that you have a 6'3", 215-pound freakazoid to throw the ball to, who can then catch a pass and take it 50 yards. And that, that helps any guy. So I think Florida's a live dog on the road on Saturday. South Carolina, they certainly played really well against Kentucky. They have the bye week. We'll see how that kind of team travels. They're normally way better, in South Kakalaki than they are, on the road. So, and I think Tennessee should be. I know that, Arkansas is hoping for a dead cat bounce with Petrino, or a dead hog bounce, but I don't see that happening.
I think we saw Lagway's game last week against Texas. I think we saw Lagway have his moments. It kind of makes me think that we'll see Sellers' moment this weekend at LSU against a team that can't really score. That LSU offense ain't going to run away from South Carolina. You know what I mean? So I do feel like this is a game where if Sellers just kind of follows that blueprint that Jalen Milroe laid out last year against LSU, and I know it's a different defense, but just like, hey, run, pass, do it all, and kind of control the game, I could maybe see South Carolina pull the upset down there.
If that happens, then we're going to be having that same conversation. And folks have frankly have already had it at times this season. But if what you say comes to fruition, then that James Franklin convo we were having,
yeah,
people are going to be having that same deal with Brian Kelly, because it's like, we can't fire him, but man, we want him gone. Can we find a new home? Because that is going to be one pricey divorce.
The solution there is just to work out a trade. Like, Kelly, you go to Penn State. Franklin, you come to LSU. Everything will be fine.
Or maybe a 3-teamer. Let's find a 3-teamer.
Yeah, Franklin, you end up at UCLA. Yeah, we'll bring Newhousel. Newhousel can come coach LSU with Orgeron. They can get the band back together. That game last year, I mean, that was one of the dumbest losses for South Carolina. They should have beaten that LSU team last year.
Well,
so
and they did, and that was one that was marred by poor. That was one of the poorest. I'm not one that typically says officials cost teams games, but that negating the pick six, Oramani's pick six that got taken off the board, and then Sellers got hurt in that game too.
Yep. I don't blame the refs were terrible, but I don't blame them for taking off the pick six. That was just a dumb play by South Carolina's defense trying to take out Nussmeier. But there were 6 other calls that they blew. But the pick six was just South Carolina losing their damn mind on what should have been the game-deciding play. But it's a good weekend of SEC football. Hopefully, for my sake, Tennessee, Arkansas is boring. But there are some teams. We talked about Alabama on the road at Missouri. Oklahoma, Texas. It depends on what happens with Mateer, but neither one of those fan bases can really afford a loss there. Oklahoma, if you can't beat this Texas team, then you ain't ever going to do nothing in the SEC, right? Like, I understand your quarterback's gone, but, like, your defense should be able to stop this Texas team. That's very clear.
Well, so you saw the line that came out on that game?
Originally, it posted like 10, right? Like, or at least that's what the number flashed originally. And then, now I see it down at, Texas favored by a field goal.
Oh, so I didn't see that 10 deal. I just saw the Texas by 3, so I didn't see that 10 deal. Maybe that must have been a glitch or something. But
yeah, or maybe it was an old one or something, because it was one of those just like, there's no way that's right. And then, it was immediately 3.
So Cole Kubilak, famed SEC network, great analyst, also at JOX in Alabama. he tweeted, because I think folks were tweeting at him like, hey, how is Texas favored after they just lost to Florida and Oklahoma's undefeated? And I know Oklahoma, probably isn't going to have Mateer, but they've looked so mumuch better. They have the best defensive line, Stone and those guys. We're going to kill Arch. And he basically said, if you watched the Hawkins kid who struggled mightily, you saw him firsthand, in that Tennessee game, struggled mightily last year. He goes, if you watched him play against Kent State on Saturday, you'd understand why Texas is favored. I have not gone back and seen the cut-ups of that game yet. After I saw that tweet, it's on my schedule for later this week. But that could be the equalizer because Texas still does have some dudes on defense. They didn't play well at all on Saturday. Simmons and Hill and those guys got exposed. But they do have some guys. So that one's going to be interesting. And I think, the South Soldiers rivalry, Jordan Hare at night is one of the scarier stadiums. No matter what sort of team Auburn has, that's always one of the scarier stadiums to play in. Georgia certainly looked a lot better, but it was Kentucky. I think they have found something with those two freshmen on the right side of the offensive line. It's more about just getting those guys healthy and letting them actually play more snaps than it is, do they have questions there? It's clear that, 33 is going to be their lead tailback, and Frazier's going to be kind of become the fill-in home run hitter guy. So that's going to be interesting too. Gunnar Stockton certainly showed up well on the road at Tennessee. Can he do it again at Auburn? It's a great SEC slate. This is going to be a really fun upcoming Saturday, just because teams are going to start differentiating themselves, I think, even more so than what we've seen thus far.
Of the 4 top 10 teams in action, with not counting Ole Miss, who's hosting Washington State in a very random game, but Alabama on the road at Missouri, Oklahoma against Texas, A&M hosting Florida, and Georgia on the road at Auburn. Of those 4 teams, how many do you see losing this weekend?
I'm gonna say 50%. I'm gonna say 2.
You want to go on record with which 2 you see losing? You don't have to.
No. My gut says Alabama and Oklahoma.
It'd be a big statement win for Missouri if they're able to win that game. That opens them up to win the SEC if they win that game.
It would. Due
to my 2-week rivalry with Missouri fans online, they'd be really coming at me. So I'm kind of, I don't want to say rooting for Alabama, but I'm definitely not rooting for Missouri. I don't know if I can say I'm rooting for Alabama, but I am not rooting for Missouri. I will go on record and say that.
Well, to show me Saturday.
Show me Saturday. That's it.
What do you think? What you think about? What did you read my Bill Belichick column? What you think about?
I did read it, and it feels like this morning, when they're talking about how they wouldn't even let North Carolina tweet out Drake May highlight videos, I said, "Oh, this is going to end in a 1-year divorce. Like, there's no way he makes it to year 2.
They can't pay him."
And then North Carolina put out the video of Drake May afterwards. So they're at a money crunch, like they're facing a money issue as well.
It's not necessarily facing a money issue, but this is. I don't think people understand the reason this is so embarrassing. And I have it up on my Substack, Surrender Cobra. I made a bunch of ludicrous puns because Ludacris held a concert at 10 a.m. And I mean, it was a layup. I mean, it's like how low can it get?
Sure.
You could do the move, get out the way. I think that's what North Carolina fans are certainly thinking right now. But
what's your fantasy? Not giving up 40. Not giving up 40 points on defense would be nice. Like,
yep. Yeah. I had that on there. I had that one listed as well.
Bill Belichick and his 25-year-old girlfriend. Do you think they listen to that? I don't know, but they're in a bad spot.
Mike Lombardi, who assembled this rat roster, is the highest paid general manager in the country,
and he's stunk in the NFL.
And he was bad in the NFL. And he was a bad podcaster, and then they ripped him off that, and then he's now just completely sunk North Carolina's program. I mean, they have hired, Sunbelt Billy's got like the Billy Napier's got the Sunbelt Billy moniker. this is a Sun Belt, Billy, as in Sun Belt Billy, Bill Belichick team, because it's a bunch of, group of 6 players that they ended up recruiting, and they are just completely uncompetitive right now against Power 4 competition. They've lost, I think, by an average of over 4 touchdowns. Clemson, as bad as it's been for Clemson, they hadn't scored 28 points all season. They scored 28 points in the first quarter. Belichick is legitimately fortunate that Dabo Swinney felt bad for him. And honestly respected him and respected what he's done, because they could have hung easily 50 to 60 points on him.
Oh,
and there's going to be other teams on that schedule that are not going to reciprocate such kindness to 173-year-old Bill Belichick.
Yeah, they had 35, with a couple of minutes left in the second quarter. I for a little bit, I thought Dabo was going to take out the season's frustrations on Belichick and make a statement and score 70, but he didn't. It's been a rough couple of weeks, or a rough season for the old coaches. I've been pretty depressed watching Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll, two guys that squared off in a Super Bowl 11 years ago. Watching them kind of go head to head, because both guys just look completely lost. Carroll with the Raiders and Belichick with the Tar Heels, of course.
And this is North Carolina's never been some sort of. They have been the definition of mid, as a college football program in their almost for their entire history. Typically 6-6 or a 7-5 team, but now they're looking at legitimately becoming the ACC basement, cellar dweller, and to get rid of Belichick. Should there be a divorce? Should he, he loves to be on to whatever the next team is, or on to whoever. He probably should be on to the beach, and he and Jordan can go head out, but they'd owed him $20 million, and he's not going to, this is not a man that's going to turn down that money.
And he ain't getting an NFL job after this.
No.
The thought was that he might use this to get back in the NFL. That is now cooked. All right, Jesse, final thoughts. Anything you want to get on wax before we end this week's podcast? Any predictions you want to make? Anything you want to say?
No, I guess my last thing is just from circling back to next week and then kind of looking forward. I think Miami and Ohio State have separated themselves as the best 2 teams in the country. Still think Oregon's really good. Little more skeptical, though, a tad, just because of how they finished that game against Penn State and in fact what we saw from Penn State a week later. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think clearly 1 and 2 in some order are going to be Ohio State and Miami. And they look like the best 2 most complete teams in the country right now.
Don't give up. Don't give up on Cristobal doing something dumb. It could still happen. He could still coach them into something stupid. Just wait.
Super Mario. Giveth and taketh.
Posted. Go check out Surrender Cobra on Substack. Give Jesse a follow. If you don't already, read his work. Go subscribe to the Substack. Some good college football coverage. And subscribe here, wherever you listen or watch your podcast. If you're listening to it, go check us out on YouTube. If you're watching it, go subscribe on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Jesse, appreciate you. I'll talk to you next week, brother.
See you, brother.
See you, bye.